Welcome to the Fourth and Long podcast on the Alex Sports Show channel here on YouTube. Today's episode, we will be going over my Week 9 college football review. I will be giving you my analysis on every single college football game from Week 9 and giving you our record for game picks from last week and our upset picks / other picks record as well from last week. But to start, let's go and share our screen and let's get into the review and analysis. We start with Syracuse and Pittsburgh. This was a very, as you can see by the score, very one-sided game in favor of Pitt. Eli Holstein, 2 touchdowns, 11 of 15 passing for 108 yards, 7.5 yards per attempt. And Desmond Reed only had 47 yards rushing, which to me signified that they were mixing in other running backs throughout the game, as you can see. And their best receiver, Williams, only had 2 catches. They had Lee with 2 catches. Overman with 2 catches. Tight end with 2 catches. And their tight end had 3 catches. They had Robinson that had a catch. Johnson had 3 catches. Mumfield had 1 catch. Reynolds had 1 catch. Yarnell had a catch. Defensively for Pitt, you had Rashawn Biles. It looks like Rashawn Biles was targeted 12 times. Hold on. I'm having issues with the mic. Rashawn Biles was targeted 12 times, 7 solo tackles, 1 sack, 1 TFL, 1 turnover. And then you had Brandon George, targeted 7 times, 2 solo tackles, no sacks. He had no sacks, but he had a half a TFL. And then you had a bunch of guys, 2 guys with 6 targeted 6 times, 3 solo tackles. And then you had Pitt played really good defense. As you can see, they only gave up 13 points. Now we get over to the Syracuse side. And I'm going to look at the positive first. Look at the positive for Kyle McCord. 300 yards, 321 yards passing. That's the good. The bad was 5 yards per attempt on his passes. The ugly here, 5 interceptions, including 2 pick sixes. And I think this tells me that Syracuse, this is their second loss of the year. Yeah. This is Syracuse's second loss of the year. This tells me that, Fran Brown was a home run hire for Pitt in the offseason. And I still like the hire, but this tells me that they're not ready to be serious contenders in the ACC this year, which I didn't think they were if you saw my analysis of them on the preseason. Aiken only ran for 32 yards. You had Valeria run for 4 yards. Willis, 3 yards. McCord, this is sad. 9 carries, negative 32 yards, negative 3.6 yards a carry. That is pitiful. Overall, I do think Syracuse can bounce back from this. They've got Virginia Tech this week. And I can see Syracuse possibly winning that game. Later on in this show, you will get my game picks and upset picks for this week. But hold up. I need to. Give me a second. Okay, we're back. I was plugging my computer back in. But like I said, I think Syracuse could bounce back from this. The next game we're going to review, Boise State wins a close game against UNLV, and if you saw my college football rankings that I put up on my YouTube community polls today, you saw where I had Boise State. Boise State is for real. And they might be one of the 12 teams in the playoff this year. Don't be surprised if they are. Just saying. Unfortunately, I am not a very good singer. If I was, then yes, I could do a rap, but I'm not a very good singer. And Chase Gaming, what's up? But how is everybody doing today? So, and I had my doubts about it. Maddox Matson coming into the season, and it seems like Maddox has done very good. Then now we get to the Saturday games, and we're going to start with BYU UCF. And before I get into my review, my analysis of this game, I'm going to say this. I don't know how UCF came in to this game favored by 2 points. I understand for BYU, it might have been a trap game, but I don't get how BYU was the quote-unquote underdog in this game. So now here's my analysis. Jake Ratzlaff is one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. And I know he only threw for 228 passing yards, but he had 2 touchdowns, and he also added 14 carries for 38 yards on the ground with a rushing touchdown as well. So I think it's safe to say that BYU might stay undefeated the rest of the season. Now we get over and my other analysis is it seems like BYU's got two or three. They can rotate in running backs. As you see, they had two guys go for over 80 yards rushing. And Martin and Rapelli. Martin went for 101. And Rapelli went for 83. Martin's the one that LJ Martin had the touchdown, the other rushing touchdown for BYU. Their receivers had a pretty steady game. They had one guy over 70 yards receiving, and he finished with 75. And it was Chase Roberts. Now we get to UCF. And my analysis is going to be a little lopsided here for UCF. They are a dumpster fire. And I expected this coming into the season. I think Malzahn might be gone at the end of the year. Dylan Rick, 6 of 10 for 102 yards and a touchdown. If you're playing more than one quarterback, that normally means you don't have a quarterback. And that's never a good sign. The only bright spot, in my opinion, for UCF, and I've talked up their running game a lot, it is RJ Harvey. Another 100-yard game for RJ Harvey, and not one, but 2 touchdowns. Harvey is the best player on UCF. They've lost 5 or 6 guys over the last couple of weeks to the portal, that plan on entering the transfer portal. And then KJ Jefferson got benched halfway through the season as well. And that's a bad look for UCF. And I expected them to struggle this year. The next game we are going to briefly review is Oregon and Illinois. As you see, Oregon, one-sided dominant win, which I was kind of expecting Oregon to win this game and put up at least 40 points, and they were 2 points away from putting up 40. Now we go to Penn State. Now I'm going to give you my analysis on Penn State and Wisconsin. As you can see, Penn State kind of struggled in the first half. They only had 7 points going into halftime. And I watched, as you know, I watch every single college football game. And I watched this and I was worried about Penn State, that they were going to get upset a week before playing Ohio State. Somehow they won, but the worry point here is Drew Aller. Is Aller going to be able to play against Ohio State? He got hurt. He was having a good game before he got hurt. 14 of 18, 148 yards, and a touchdown. And he had almost a 54% of 54 QBR rating. And I think that he would have been. I think Aller plays against Ohio State. I know James Franklin said it's going to come down to game time and whether Drew Aller plays, but I think Penn State might be in trouble if Drew Aller does not play against Ohio State. I think if it's Bo Pagula, I think Penn State's offense might take a slight downgrade against Ohio State. Look at the running game. They can lean on the running game with Singleton and Allen, Katron Allen, and Nick Singleton. If Drew Aller does not play. Aller had 4 carries for 8 yards. Pagula had 6 for 28. Then you had Wallace, Harrison Wallace the second, 5 catches, 67 yards. You had Tyler Warren, which I will talk about Ohio State, Penn State later on in the show. But Warren is the one guy I'm worried about for Penn State in their offense as an Ohio State fan. He's their tight end, but it seems like he does a lot of everything. And it is kind of worries me a little bit. But then again, that's just me. Now let's get over to the Wisconsin side. Wisconsin, it looks like they had 3 points, 7. They were up 10-7 going into halftime. Came out, scored 3 more points, and that was it. And I mean, Braden Locke did throw an interception. And my thing is with Wisconsin, you can't look at how many times Braden Locke had dropped back to throwing the ball. He had 22 completions on 42 attempts for 200 yards, 217 yards. You can't be throwing the ball 42 times against a top 10 team. You got to mix in and run more. And Taven Walker had 59 yards rushing, and you had 1 carry from a different. It seemed like the backfield was dominated by Taven Walker, as you can see, with 29 carries, 22 carries for 59 yards and a touchdown. But then you had Bertans, Pauling, and Dupree with the carry. The receiving game, not too shabby. You had Will Pauling with 79 yards receiving, Vinny Anthony with 68 yards, 41 from CJ Williams, Dupree with 14. Riley had 1 catch for 6 yards. Tucker Ashcraft only had 4 yards receiving, and Walker had 3 yards receiving. That's not what you necessarily want. Like I said a minute ago, Wisconsin going forward, I think the best thing for them to do is run the football. Nebraska, Ohio State. Ohio State ends up winning this game. Thought and this one might take a little longer because I'm an Ohio State fan, so I'm going to give you my personal analysis. So, Will Howard, 13 of 16, 221, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. That's the good. The bad is, and we will get to the rushing and receiving here in a second, but what I'm going to say is the offensive line, they lost Josh Simmons for the season. They played Zen Mahalski in place of Josh Simmons last week. And Mahalski struggled. You need to put somebody else in that spot on that side of the offensive line. You can't put Mahalski in there, especially this week against Penn State. He's going to get annihilated. And it's not going to be beautiful. Because Will Howard's going to have to run for his life. And I don't think Will Howard should be having to do that. He should have time in the pocket. And Ohio State just played ugly. To put it frank with you. They did not play good. and somehow they still won. I mean, Judkins and Henderson had decent days, 29 yards rushing, 28, 25 yards rushing. Howard had 14, and then so that's 3 guys that had carries. And then you had Carnell Tate go for 100 yards on 4 catches for a touchdown, 4 for 102 and a touchdown. Jeremiah Smith, 3 for 70 and a touchdown. And a Quinshon Judkins, 1 catch, 9 yards and a touchdown. Ohio State, I think they're going to be fine. They just need to find, if you're going to have Mahalski start in place of the guy that's out for the season, Josh Simmons, you need to put a tight end on his side to help block because he's still young, and that was his first start last week against Nebraska. Now we get to the Nebraska side, and it looked like Dylan Raiola did struggle. He had 152 yards passing and an interception. But their run game was good for Nebraska. The receiving, they had a couple guys, one guy over 50 yards, and then they had Ja'Cory Barney was 1 yard away from being at 50 yards. Jamal Banks had 2 catches for 31 yards. That Nebraska, to me, they look what they've done in year 2 under Matt Rhule. 5-3. I still think they have some games they can win down the stretch and finish 9-3 or 8-4. So Nebraska fans, you still have a lot to look forward to the rest of the season. Vandy and Texas. And this was a game that I said I thought was going to maybe be close, and it ended up being close. And it scares me that Texas only beat Vanderbilt by 3 points. And I'm worried about Texas. Very much worried that my preseason and mid-season pick to make the SEC championship game isn't going to make it. Then you got Miami and Florida State. There's really nothing here. Cam Moore, I know I give him grief. He is good. I know he had no touchdowns, throwing for no touchdowns, but he's good. Then you have Texas A&M and LSU. And Garrett Nussmeier, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. For all that noise he was talking during the week, be careful what you wish for, Nussmeier, because, like they say, it might just happen. 2 touchdowns, 3 picks, 400 yards passing, though. That is, I guess, good, but we'll get to Texas A&M side of this in a second. You had Josh Williams go for 23 yards. Caleb Durham. Caden Durham went for 16 yards, and then Nussmeier had -3 yards rushing. Their receivers. Aaron Armstrong, 126 yards on 3 catches. Then you had Kyron Lacey, also had 100 yards receiving. And Durham had 56. Hilton Jr. had 36. 22 from Xavier Thomas. Mason Taylor had 21 yards. Overall, LSU played a good game. They just ran into an A&M team that, I have to say this for now, they are for real. I know it was hard to say that, but they are for real. And I did say this earlier, if you have two quarterbacks, you have no quarterbacks. In Texas A&M's case, it is different. They have two quarterbacks that are good. Marcel Reed did not start the game, but he came in and went 2 for 2 for 78 for 70 yards passing after Connor Weigman went 6 of 18 for 64 yards passing. And then you had Amari Daniels go for 91 yards rushing. Le'Veon Moss went for 83 and 2 TDs. You had Marcel Reed, 9 carries for 62 yards, 6.9 yards per carry. Not one, not two, 3 rushing touchdowns. That is wild. I think A&M has a real QB dilemma. And I hope they pick the right QB, because if one doesn't start at the end of the year, unless Elko can convince him, one of them will, mark my words, will enter the transfer portal. And overall, to me, this was a really good game. We go up to the American. Navy Notre Dame. Navy for a little bit hung in there, but then Notre Dame just outplayed them a bunch, and it was a little worrisome to me. You have Charlotte and Memphis. Memphis, it looked like they were looking ahead to their game this week against UTSA. And that's something you don't do. You don't look ahead in college football. You focus on the game that you're playing. And Seth Hennigan had 2 more touchdowns. But Navy Charlotte hung in there. Memphis gets the win now, 33-28. Then you had Tulane and North Texas. This game, to me, I will give you there's certain games I'm going to give you not the box score, but I'll give you my overall thoughts on in this analysis. Here's one of the games that I will give you full analysis on. And Tulane, Deacon Messiah, 3 TDs, 1 pick, 175 yards passing. And this baffles me, he only threw the ball 13 times on 10 attempts. How? How does that happen? Micah Hughes, Malachi Hughes, 30 carries, 105 yards and a touchdown. Then you had Ty Thompson, 1 carry for 17 yards and a touchdown. And Yelith Brown, 1 carry for 11 yards and a touchdown. So you had 3 different guys with the rushing touchdown for Tulane. And then you had a couple other guys good in there. Fleming, 1 carry, negative 1 yard. And then the quarterback had 2 carries for negative 3 yards. Deontay Fleming, 92 yards receiving. The touchdowns were to Brown, Williams, and Bauman. Tulane played a really good game here and ended up winning, but it was close. North Texas is actually really good. Chandler Morris, 3 TDs on 400 yards passing. How? I thought he was done after he left Texas A&M or whatever school he was at before North Texas. Chandler Morris is one of the best quarterbacks in the AAC. Their rushing game was okay. Nobody over 30 yards. Receiving, DT Stafford had 125 yards and a touchdown, and 2 touchdowns from Ward on 6 catches, 111 yards. Overall, I thought this was one of the more entertaining games of the week. Now, I can't say that about the next game in the AAC. And that would be ECU and Temple. ECU 56, Temple 34. Let's keep this one short and sweet. I think ECU is somewhat good, but Temple's horrible. Let's put it like that. Then you've got 2 more games in the AAC. One is UConn and Rice. And how in the world does Rice lose to UConn? I mean, don't get me wrong. Look at UConn's record. 5-3 in football. UConn is notorious for being a basketball school. Maybe they're starting to get good at football again. Who knows? And then you have UTSA and Tulsa. This was a sneaky good game. 46-45. No one expected Tulsa to win this game. I didn't even expect Tulsa to win. I expected them to lose. Now we will get to our review of last week for our review of our records from last week in college football. We went 24-7 in our game picks, which brings our season record to 228-111. And in our other picks, which is upsets, picks against the spread, and over-under, we went 13-14 last week for a season total of 75-95. And this week, we are going to start with, I'm going to give you all my upset picks, all my picks against the spread, all of my over-under picks on the show today. So let's get started here with my upset picks. My first upset is Louisiana +3 to upset Texas State. And that game is actually tonight. And I like this upset for one reason. I think Louisiana can pull this upset because Texas State's good, but I just don't see where Texas State can win this game. Next one is Arizona +6 to upset UCF. This upset is definitely going to happen. I absolutely see it happening, and try to convince me otherwise. UCF is horrible. There is no reason UCF should be favored against Arizona, and they are. And then my last upset is Jacksonville State +1 to upset Liberty. And Liberty just got upset by Kennesaw State last week. I think they're due for another upset this week. My first pick against the spread this week is Rice plus 12.5 to cover against Navy. I think Navy's going to win this game, but I think Rice covers the spread here and keeps it close. Air Force plus 24.5 to cover against Army. This is another one that I think has a possibility of potentially happening. And it would be crazy if it did. Next, Florida plus 16 to cover against Georgia. Now, call me crazy, but what I've seen from the Gators the last 2 weeks before their bye is promising. And I think they can cover against Georgia. They will not win this game, but I think they cover. Then I've got Louisiana Monroe plus 11 to cover against Marshall. Marshall is horrible. Charles Huff might get fired at the end of the year. So give me ULM plus 11 to cover. And then we've got Louisville plus 11 to cover against Clemson. Okay, now we get to the next batch of upset picks. Georgia State plus 7.5 to upset UConn. I just talked about how UConn shouldn't have beaten Rice, but Rice, as we know, is not particularly good. And I think this game, I think that Georgia State here is going to pull the upset against UConn. Pitt plus 7 to upset SMU. This is a crucial game in the ACC, and I think Pitt can pull the upset here, but you'll see who I think is going to win this game later on in my game picks. Then we've got Tulsa plus 3.5 to upset UAB. UAB is neither of these teams are good. Somebody's got to win now. And I think it's going to be Tulsa. Tulsa's going to pull the upset. And then we get to my picks against the spread. UTSA plus 7.5 to cover against Memphis. I really think that Memphis, they're going to win this game, but I think UTSA ends up somehow covering the spread against Memphis. My next pick against the spread is Duke plus 20 to cover against Miami, Florida. And Miami, Florida, they're going to win. I think they win this game, but I think Duke is going to keep it closer than some people might think. Then we've got Texas Tech plus 14.5 to cover against Iowa State as my last cover pick of the week. Oh, wait, no, yeah. I think Texas Tech covers here. And then now here are my over-under picks. I have K-State versus Houston. Total is 46.5. Give me over 46.5 points here. I think there's going to be a ton of scoring on the K-State side, which will put this total easily over 46.5. Next, we've got Texas A&M at South Carolina. That total, ironically, is also 46.5. And give me over 46.5 points at the Texas A&M South Carolina game as well. And the last one in this one is Kennesaw State and Western Kentucky. Total is 50.5. I don't trust that there's going to be that many points scored, at least on the Kennesaw State side. They did get lucky last week and upset Liberty. Does it happen again where they score a lot of points? Maybe. And this might look bad. But I think Kennesaw State and Western Kentucky go under the total. And then we've got more over-under picks. We got Vandy and Auburn. Total is 48. Give me over 48 points in the Vandy-Auburn game. Vanderbilt is upset that they lost to Texas by 3, and I think they're going to put up a boatload of points against Auburn on Saturday. Then we've got Virginia Tech and Syracuse. And I'm personally, the total is 53.5. Give me over 53.5 points. And the Syracuse Virginia Tech game. And then the last game is Army and Air Force. Total is 42 points. Give me under 42. I don't think either team. I know Army has been very explosive this year, but give me under 42 points in the Army Air Force game. Now we get to our game picks. And we start in the Big 12. Arizona and UCF. And you can put who you're picking to win each college football game I give you a game pick for down in the comment section. Arizona, UCF. I am going to go with Arizona. I don't think that UCF can keep this game close at all. I think Arizona blows them out of the building. Even though it's in Orlando, I think Arizona is going to win this game. I am very confident on that. Then we've got Kansas State and Houston. I am taking Kansas State here. This is another game where I don't think it's going to be that close. Many people think it will be. I don't think it will. I think this game might be over by the end of the first half. It's sad to say that for Houston fans, but I think that's how it's going to end. Iowa State versus Texas Tech. I am taking the Cyclones to beat the Red Raiders. Give me Iowa State in a close, hard-fought game. Then we've got Oklahoma State and Arizona State. Give me Oklahoma State to beat Arizona State. And then Baylor and TCU. Normally here I would take TCU, but I just feel like Baylor's playing with house money right now, as they say, and I think Baylor wins this game. Now we get to the Big Ten. And the big game in the Big Ten this week is Penn State, Ohio State. And I'm going to take Ohio. I'm taking the Buckeyes to win against Penn State. And I think it's going to be closer than people think at the start. But something tells me once we get into the second half, Ohio State's going to pull away like they do every year against Penn State. Then you've got Northwestern and Purdue. I am going with the Northwestern Wildcats here. Purdue is awful. The problem is here, I'm a little worried that Purdue might pull an upset against Northwestern. But I'm still taking Northwestern to win. Then you've got Minnesota and Illinois. Give me Illinois. Minnesota might be on to a new head coach next year. But I like Illinois to bounce back after that tough loss to Oregon. And I think they're going to put up a lot of points this week against Minnesota. Speaking of Oregon, they get Michigan this week. And I am taking Oregon to beat Michigan. I don't think this is going to be close. I know there's going to be people that say it will be close. Personally, in my heart, I don't think it's going to. I think Oregon is going to run the football and throw it at will. Michigan has no quarterback. Give me Oregon. Indiana and Michigan State. Give me Indiana to stay undefeated for another week and to continue to move up the rankings, whether it be my rankings or the AP rankings in real life. Then you've got Nebraska and UCLA. Give me Nebraska to bounce back after a tough loss to Ohio State last week. And then you've got Wisconsin and Iowa. Give me Wisconsin. Now, Iowa could ruin this, and they could upset Wisconsin. No, Iowa could upset Wisconsin. I don't think it happens. I think Iowa loses to Wisconsin. And then USC and Washington. This used to be a Pac-12 matchup. I am going Washington. They are the better team in this situation. And I like Washington to win. Now we get to the SEC. Texas A&M versus South Carolina. Give me South Carolina to win. Yes. Give me South Carolina. I think South Carolina pulls off another huge upset. Ole Miss and Arkansas. I want to take Arkansas here, but I'm going Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is going to win this game. And next one is Vanderbilt and Auburn. And I just talked about this game a few minutes ago. And over-under picks. I am taking Vanderbilt to win this game by a landslide and a half. I think Vanderbilt runs them out of the building. Then you've got Oklahoma and Maine. Oklahoma should win this game easily. And if they don't and they lose to Maine, that means Brett Venables is getting fired at the end of the year. Give me Oklahoma. Georgia and Florida. Now, normally, call me crazy. Don't call me crazy. I'm taking Georgia, but I think somehow Florida, like I said earlier, will keep it close and cover the point spread. Mississippi State and UMass. Give me Mississippi State to beat UMass. And Tennessee and Kentucky. This game is personal for Tennessee. One of their former offensive linemen is now at Kentucky, and he was talking a bunch of trash in the offseason after he entered the transfer portal. And that usually doesn't end well. Give me Tennessee. Then we get to the ACC. Duke and Miami. I'm taking the Hurricanes to beat the Miami Canes to beat the Duke Blue Devils. Virginia Tech and Syracuse. Give me Tech. Stanford and NC State. NC State doesn't have Grayson McCall, who retired from football. So give me Stanford to win this game. UNC, Florida State. I'd love to take Florida State, but I just can't. It's not going to happen. You give me North Carolina. Louisville and Clemson. I'm crazy, but I am going to take Louisville to pull the upset. And then Pitt and SMU. This is the one I said to watch for. I have Pitt pulling the upset, but I think somehow SMU wins and hands Pittsburgh its first L of the season. And then we get to the American Athletic Conference. And we start with Thursday night. We got Tulane and Charlotte. Give me Tulane to beat Charlotte. Then we get Friday night. We've got South Florida and FAU. And program alert, me and Bradley Walker will be doing play-by-play for the South Florida Atlantic football game Friday night starting at 7:30. But I am taking USF. And in the Saturday games in the American Air Force and Army, give me Army. Memphis and UTSA, I'm going to take Memphis here. Navy and Rice, give me Navy. And the last one is Tulsa and UAB, give me Tulsa. And that will wrap up today's episode of the Fourth and Long podcast. If you have enjoyed the Fourth and Long podcast today, please remember to leave a thumbs up on the video and like it. And let me know in the comments what you think of the new thumbnails I'm doing for these videos. I will see everybody back here at 6:45 for another episode of the Pro Football Podcast. And that one will be a busy show as well. But have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.